Thank you so much. I so appreciate Governor Luther inviting me to be here today to talk about Alzheimer's disease and the CARD Fund. In case you haven't noticed, I brought my own cheering section. I have my lovely wife, my daughter, and my son-in-law. They're three special people in my heart. And with us today is my dear friend Bill Chalateau, past district governor of 7670 and the executive director of CARD, who's doing a great job. In the last 2 years, Bill has steered 3 more districts into the CARD effort. One in Virginia, one in Tennessee, and just recently one in Florida. So that makes 14 districts participating in the CARD program. And to my surprise, the appointed president of my fan club is here today, Barbara Ivy, of the Fort Mill Rotary Club. And I just want to take a minute to tell you about Barbara. She heard me speak about CARD last spring at her district conference. And when her 50th birthday came up in August, she decided that she and her husband Randy, who had good friends who are Nashville musicians, would come to her home and she'd invite friends. Instead of gifts, she'd ask them to donate to CARD. Well, one of her buddies in marketing said, let's make that thing bigger. So they were able to acquire free of charge the use of the music factory. And there was a big crowd there, a lot of people who weren't Rotarians. This was put together in 29 days, and they raised, they're not finished yet, but I think it's going to be something like $20,000 for the CARD Fund. Barbara, please stand up here. I feel very qualified to talk to you about Alzheimer's disease and to tell you why I'm a proponent of CARD. Unfortunately, in our family, we experienced a loved one having the disease. My wife's wonderful mother, my daughter's grandmother, my second mother, at age 70 was one of the most dynamic ladies you could ever meet. She spent a lot of her time teaching young teenagers how to bowl. And 2 years later, we started noticing a memory loss. It turned out to be Alzheimer's, but hers was the long, long, long goodbye, lasting 18 years. The last 4 years of which she knew none of us. I cannot give you an adjective to describe the heartbreak to a family to see someone you love absolutely in a living death status. Can you imagine not being able to tell someone that you're hungry, that you need to go to the bathroom, that your throat hurts? Things that we do every day and take for granted. No one should have to do that. And that's why I'm so proud of the CARD Fund, because at early stages we recognized that only through research would we find the cause, prevention, and cure for this devastating disease. We found our niche early on in that we provide the seed money or startup money for cutting-edge research. And our scientist friends tell us that that is some of the most difficult money to obtain. Maybe it's because they don't want to take a chance, that they think it's risky. But because of the procedure we use, we're very proud of the grants we've made to some of the finest research scientists in the world. As we're talking today, we have on our website and on the website of our friends, the American Federation for Aging Research, the announcement that we are receiving applications for our 2014 grants, which are due by December 4th. These grant applications will come to us in what is called an LOI, or letter of intent, describing the research the scientist wishes to pursue. Now, I hasten to tell you that I have never met a Rotarian qualified to look at these applications and tell you who should get the grant. We've been so fortunate from the very beginning to have world-renowned scientists serve as an advisory team of no less than 3 scientists to make recommendations to us. Now, what will happen on December 4th, our grants chairman, past District Governor Jim Pereira of District 6920, and who resides in Augusta, will put these applications, and they'll range from 35 to 81, from all over the United States. He'll put them on a disc, send them to our team of scientists chaired by Dr. John Projanowski of Pennsylvania, along with Dr. Alan Levy of Emory, and Dr. Carl Harrop, who up until 18 months ago was head of Alzheimer's research at Rutgers, but has taken a position heading up Alzheimer's research at an international research center in Hong Kong. Now, we ask these scientists to narrow the list down to no more than 15. It can be as few as 9. And those that make the cut are then formally invited to apply for our grants. Once these come in, copies are sent to the scientists. As busy as they are, they give their full attention to it, confer with their colleagues, and when they have decided who they're going to recommend on a 1, 2, 3 basis, we set up a conference call with the executive committee of the CARD Board of Directors. And this conference call can last up to 2 hours, because not only do they tell us why they have selected the ones they have and what their research is about, but they oftentimes tell us why they eliminated certain research applications. It's very informative, and we ask a lot of questions. Now, the grantees that apply understand that a part of the getting the grant is that they must attend at their own expense our annual board meeting, held every year in Columbia in May, to tell us about their research, to meet our board members, and allow us to ask questions. Governor Luther was there last year when our 2013 grantees, Dr. Beth Stevens of Harvard and Dr. Bruce Lamb of Cleveland Clinic, was there to tell us about their research. And in their remarks of thanking the CART board, they said, without our CART grant, we would be unable to do our research. And we hear this all the time. Now, these grants are usually for 2 years. So at that meeting, we give them 25% of the grant funds up front. And in 8 months, they send us a progress report and a financial report. And if everything's in order, they get the second check, and so on. But the end of the 2 years does not end our contact with these scientists. On a random basis, we stay in touch, because some of this research goes on for 6, 7 years. We also use them as a resource when maybe one of you asks us a question we don't know the answer to. And many of them have been so generous in speaking at our district conferences. In fact, Dr. Philip Wong of Johns Hopkins spoke to your district conference some years ago. Now, what we're doing and following up with them is best illustrated by what happened just this past winter. A big full-page article was in the New York Times in which a couple of scientists were saying that they had the cure for Alzheimer's disease. And what they were saying was that we all have a protein in our brain called tau, T-A-U, that characteristically gives off tangles, and that these tangles were causing the Alzheimer's disease. They said they could stop this from happening using an old chemical, maybe 100 years old, called methylene blue. Well, that sounded wonderful. It just so happens that we had 2 scientists that had CARD grants actively dealing with the protein tau. So we set up individual conference calls with these two scientists, the first one being Dr. Sanjay Pimpakar of Cleveland Clinic. And you just saw a film on tangles and plaques. Well, the plaque that forms on most of our brains, and in many times covers the brain, has been the focus of 95% of all research. But we still don't have a cure. Don't even have a known cause. And as Dr. Pimpakar's theory was, that these same tangles that we talked about connect with that beta amyloid plaque and trigger Alzheimer's disease. Using a CART grant and genetically engineered mice, he proved his research to his satisfaction and has published numerous papers. And another scientist agreed with his research, Dr. Kurt Bruden from Pennsylvania, and he got a CART grant because he wants to develop a drug that will stop the tangles from happening. So when we called them, they of course had read the article, and they told us, unfortunately, that they had tested methylene blue extensively, and it did not do what its proponents said it would do. In closing, they both said something that was quite interesting. They said, we hope that you folks at CART will give strong consideration on your future grants to research that focuses on early detection. Well, that makes a lot of sense. There are hundreds of thousands of Americans walking around today who've caught their cancer early, avoid the spread. Those that found that they had blockage in their heart and had a stent put in and are enjoying a very productive life. Well, the same is very true for Alzheimer's disease, and maybe even more so. But it really made us feel good about what we've done, because the very first grant we made in 1999 to Dr. Alan Levy of Emory was his idea to develop a blood test that would tell you at the earliest stages the presence of Alzheimer's disease. Now, in one sense, it was not successful. He could only do about 80% accuracy, and the cost of administering the test was prohibitive. But you have to understand the difference between what these research scientists at these centers do as opposed to pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceuticals keep their research secret, hoping that they develop a magic pill that will earn them $1 trillion. These scientists share with their colleagues, and there are not that many of them, their findings. So in the event someone else wants to do a blood test, they will know the pitfalls, the roadblocks that Dr. Levy encountered, and perhaps save themselves several years of research. But in addition, in doing his research, Dr. Levy saw something in the brain he had never seen before. He was able to isolate it, and with the assistance of scientists from Toronto and Columbia University and one from Wake Forest, they had identified a gene that they think causes as much as 14% of all Alzheimer's. We've also, a few years later, made a grant to Dr. Claudio Soto of Texas, who wants to also develop a blood test for early detection. He's world famous among scientists because he developed the only blood test that is used to determine mad cow disease. We also provided the seed money to Dr. Gary Small and his colleagues at UCLA, who were the first to develop neuroimaging of the brain, whereby through scans you can see Alzheimer's developing. I remember Dr. Small took the red eye from LA to be at our board meeting. You may have seen him on television. I've seen him 3 or 4 times a year. He's highly regarded. The last time we spoke to him, he said they were still refining their research so that the scans would be even more effective. And then in 2011, when we had 81 applicants, the #1 grant went to Dr. Corona Maya of Cedars-Sinai Hospital in UCLA in Los Angeles. Now, hers is a two-part research involving bone transplant that might help early Alzheimer's victims. But the second part was to identify early Alzheimer's through the retina of the eye. That's what we do. We've also given grants for trying to determine the cause, new drug development, and testing diseases that might bring on early Alzheimer's, such as diabetes. Now, a good example of how all this works occurred in 2001. We had only $250,000, and the grant went to Dr. Gary Landreth of Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. And if Gary was standing here today, he would tell you, as he's told us, that the CART Fund was his last hope. He had gone to the Alzheimer's Association, every foundation he knew, to try to get the money to do his research. With the CART grant, within 18 months, he had proven his research, which was a new drug development, to the effect that he was able to apply to the National Institute of Health for a major grant. They are the providers of the big money for all diseases. He got $2 million, which carried him on into his research for about 9 years, proved his research, patented his findings, and about 18 months ago made a deal with a pharmaceutical who will carry on the research, do human trial testing, and part of the agreement is that the pharmaceutical will spend no less than $220 million. So a $250,000 seed money grant from CART has been parlayed into a minimum of $222 million. That's what we do. Now, there have been some disappointments in some drug development that didn't pan out. But in recent couple of years, we're now a lot more optimistic. Number one, the scientists all agree that Alzheimer's starts long before they ever suspected. Now, why is that important? Well, there were some outstanding drugs out there that had great promise about 6, 7 years ago. And they were being tested on what they thought were people in the early stages. Say on a scale of 1 to 10, stage 1, maximum stage 2. They now believe that these folks were probably at stage 5 or 6, which made the drug ineffective. In addition, I must tell you that we all have something called brain-blood barrier. It's there to keep the bad things out, let the good things in. And they're now realizing that so many of the drugs that held great promise didn't penetrate that barrier sufficiently enough to combat Alzheimer's. All new drug development is going to require ahead of time that they are able to determine that it will penetrate the brain-blood barrier. They have ways of doing that now. In addition, we gave a grant to Dr. Bradley Hyman of Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, who, in layman terms, is trying to develop a conveyor system that will help medications penetrate the brain, that brain-blood barrier. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of these promising drugs are retested. My friends, we're making a difference. We have now made 22 grants in excess of $4 million. And what you should all know is that from the very beginning, we were dedicated to the idea that 100% of every dollar you donate goes to research. And we've maintained that, and we intend to maintain that. That is the good news. The bad news is that Alzheimer's research is badly underfunded. Just 3 years ago, France spent more money on Alzheimer's research than we did in our country. And in 2005, 2006, the Bush administration cut funding to NIH quite dramatically. And none were hurt more than Alzheimer's research. Just last year, NIH gave a $6.1 billion grant for cancer research, $5 billion for heart research, $3.5 billion for AIDS research, and only $450 million for Alzheimer's research. There's something terribly wrong with those priorities. And thanks to prominent people like former Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who can contact those people who can make a difference, they're realizing that some adjustment needs to be made. There's been a bill out there that would propose to bring the top minds together in order to expedite finding a cause, prevention, and cure of this disease. Believe it or not, it passed both houses of Congress. The bad news is they didn't fund it. And with what's going on in Washington, we don't really know if that will happen, but we certainly have high hopes. To the current administration's credit, they have proposed a lot more money for Alzheimer's research. When the cause, prevention, and cure are found, I believe, and I know Bill believes, and I hope some of you believe, that CART has played a major role in reaching that goal. In closing, I'd like to tell you that rarely a day goes by, that I don't receive multiple emails about either CART or Alzheimer's, all of which I answer. And I get a lot of articles sent to me. A few months ago, I got something that touched my heart that I'd like to share with you. There was an 82-year-old gentleman who had cut his thumb badly. And early one morning, he was at his doctor's office having the stitches removed. His compassionate nurse noticed that he was extremely nervous. And she said, "Sir, are you worried about your thumb?" And he said, "Oh no, I'm just concerned that I'll be late at 9 o'clock to have breakfast with my wife at the nursing home." And the nurse said, "Well, will she be terribly upset if you're a little bit late?" And he said, "Oh no, she won't even know it. She doesn't know me. She has Alzheimer's." And as the nurse was trying to hold back tears, she patted his hand and thought, that's the kind of love I want in my life. True love is neither just romantic or physical. True love is the acceptance of someone in all that is now, has been, will be, and will not be. It is unconditional. The happiest people don't necessarily have the best of everything. They just make the best of everything they have. Life isn't about how to survive a storm, but how to dance in the rain. My fellow Rotarians, I truly believe that through our support of CART, we might just enable the people we love the most, our families, our neighbors, our friends, everyone in this room, not only to survive the storm, but to dance in the rain. Thank you so much.